On your left. Uh-huh, on my left, got it. Hey guys, I'm Joe, and welcome back to my series of Captain America reviews. Today I'm going to be talking about Captain America, the Winter Soldier, arguably the best comic book movie in the last few years. Directed by Joe and Anthony Russo, the Russo Brothers. Captain America the Winter Soldier takes place about 2 years after the events of the first Avengers, and Steve Rogers is serving with S.H.I.E.L.D., still trying to find a way to serve his country, but also at the same time struggling to find his place in the modern world. And then certain things are revealed where it starts to make him question whether or not he should continue on serving his country, with certain levels of treachery going on inside S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury hiding certain secrets, almost causes Captain America's world to be turned on its head. And just like with the first Avenger review, there's going to be some spoilers in this video, so if you have not seen this movie, you've been warned. And also, like with the first Avenger, I did review this before, back in the day when it first came out. And also in the Phase 1, Phase 2 reviews that I did before Age of Ultron. But the first review I did for this movie, it was an older video. I don't like the way it looked, and obviously there was more to say, but I didn't want to reveal anything since it was a spoiler-free review. Now let's get more in depth into it. I had a chance to watch The Winter Soldier again recently, and I still think it's safe to say that it's a really great movie, and probably the best movie in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe thus far. Yes, even more so than the first Iron Man movie. Like any great sequel, this movie takes all the best parts of its predecessor and puts more of a focus on them, like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, The Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, and Terminator 2. Like a lot of great superhero movies, like I said with Spider-Man 2, Dark Knight, and X-Men Days of Future Past or Iron Man, you don't really see a whole ton of Captain America stuff in here, but then you realize as the movie goes on, it's more focused on building the hero, Steve Rogers, than the actual Captain America himself. That when all the crazy superhero stuff is happening, you actually care about what's going on with Steve Rogers, Captain America. Steve Rogers is feeling a bit of uncertainty in his service with S.H.I.E.L.D., doing all these operations, saving hostages, going on all these secret espionage missions with Black Widow, and also discovering that Black Widow is secretly stealing S.H.I.E.L.D. intel without him knowing about it beforehand, and also finding out that Nick Fury is leading a project called Project Insight to wipe out potential threats before they even happen, which of course Steve Rogers argues, I thought the punishment came after the crime. And there were a few scenes in the first Avengers movie that were cut out of the movie for time purposes, showing how he's struggling to live in our modern society, but what I really like is how they reincorporate that into this movie, where he goes to visit the Smithsonian Institute and seeing all these exhibits about him, which also leads to a great scene where he talks to Peggy Carter, an older Peggy Carter who's almost on her deathbed. When I first saw this at the time, I was surprised that she was actually going to be in this movie, and it's actually Haley Atwell playing Agent Carter, much older, and that scene perfectly explains why he still serves with S.H.I.E.L.D., because it kind of makes you wonder, well, if all this treachery is going on, why is he still doing it? But he says to her, knowing that you helped found S.H.I.E.L.D. is half the reason I stay. And he also tells the character Sam Wilson, I don't know if I want to get out because I don't know what I want to do with myself if I did. But back to Peggy Carter, you also find out that she has Alzheimer's. It's heartbreaking because she starts coughing and he goes to get her a drink of water, and she opens her eyes and she sees Steve and she goes, Steve? Steve? And Steve's response, it sounds very heartfelt, and Chris Evans does a great job in that scene. I have to admit, I almost teared up watching this again. I mean, whew. Now let's talk about Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. I know a lot of people are not exactly big fans of Scarlett Johansson as Black Widow. They'd rather see somebody else play this character. Now, look, I'm not saying that Scarlett Johansson would rank up with the top actresses of all time, but I think she brings something really interesting to this character. What is it exactly? I'm not really sure. Not just because it's Scarlett Johansson, but she also admits that she has flaws. Like she tells Steve Rogers in the hospital, I only act like I know everything, Rogers. And I like that. She's not some absolutely flawless, strong female character. And she has humanity underneath that exterior. And you also get a little bit more of an insight to her character, as was hinted at in the first Avengers. She was working with the KGB at one point, and then she decided to turn her life around working for S.H.I.E.L.D. And I like the chemistry between her and Captain America. You buy the sense of camaraderie that they have. Probably my favorite exchange between the two. Rescue the hostages, and then find me a date. I'm multitasking! And Samuel L. Jackson actually has a lot more to do this time around as Nick Fury. I mean, it's Sam Jackson. How can you go wrong with that guy? You also learn a little bit more about him as well, with his grandfather and his trust issues, and how he doesn't always feel easy about trusting certain people, which also plays into a theme about trust throughout this movie. He tells Cap, don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody, don't you trust anybody either, but if he really doesn't trust anyone, why else would he go to Captain America's apartment? which goes to show you, you can trust Captain America to help you out. There's still good people in this world. It may not be easy to see, but look hard enough, there's still some good people out there. And as far as him dying, I have to admit, I didn't really think he was gonna die. Not because I saw the trailer where he goes, "Looks like you're giving the orders now, Captain." At the time, I didn't really remember seeing that part in the trailers, but watching him pass away in the hospital, I just went, he's probably not dead. They can't kill off Nick Fury. He has to come back at some point. And he does. Honestly, I wasn't really too bothered by it, and I also like his confrontation with Alexander Pierce, played by Robert Redford. You need to keep both eyes open. And another great addition to this cast is Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, aka the Falcon. Anthony Mackie I've seen in a few other movies like 8 Mile, The Hurt Locker, and We Are Marshall. He's a really good actor in those movies. And this movie, he was great. I love him as this character. I don't know anything about the character outside of this movie, but I like the immediate sense of camaraderie that you get between him and Steve Rogers. They both served in the US military, and they both went through similar experiences losing a friend in battle. Steve Rogers lost Bucky, Sam Wilson lost his friend Riley, and he's also serving at the VA to help other veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress. And I like the whole on your left dynamic, which is set up before in the opening scene, which I thought was a really nice way to open. It was very quiet and mellow, but also immediately sucked you right in when you see captors running really fast going, "On your left!" And Anthony Mackie's got some funny lines. "Oh, don't look at me. I do what he does, just slower." Then you also got some other characters in here like Alexander Pierce, Agent Maria Hill, Agent 13, or as she's probably known in the comic book lore as Sharon Carter, Peggy Carter's niece. And you got a few other appearances in here by Toby Jones, and I can't remember the character's name, but he'll eventually become Crossbones, and he's going to appear as Crossbones in Civil War. And another character like Jasper Sitwell, but probably another big character in this movie for me is the Winter Soldier, who we find out in this movie is Bucky Barnes, Captain America's childhood friend from the first movie. Now I have to be honest, I accidentally spoiled that for myself when they announced the title for this movie, Captain America the Winter Soldier. I went, okay, what's Winter Soldier mean? And I looked it up and it had a picture of the same actor from the first Avenger. Bucky Barnes is the Winter Soldier, and I just went, I didn't want to know that. If I could take that back in a heartbeat, I would. So after that, I immediately stayed away from any other possible spoilers that would leak out. But it was still a great reveal, and whenever he shows up before the reveal, the music starts going, and you feel this sense of fear and dread, like when Nick Fury sees him during the police chase in downtown DC. You see him standing in the middle of the street with his mask on, you just go, who the hell is that guy? He's highly skilled, deadly, lethal, and it looks like he could kill you just by looking at you. And I remember watching this in the theater with my mom when they find out that he is Bucky Barnes, and I knew it was coming, but when he Cap grabs his mask, flips him over, and his mask falls down, I look over at my mom, and he turns around and you see his face. She has this look on her face like, who the hell is this guy? But then when Steve said, Bucky? She took another look, and she went, Bucky? Oh my god! And that's another thing that bugged me. A lot of fans were like, guys, everybody knows who the Winter Soldier is. Not true, okay? Not everybody reads comics, especially Captain America comics. We can't all read every single comic book about every single superhero before seeing a movie about them. And sometimes, a general audience wants to be surprised by the story twist when they watch the actual movie. Just because you know something from the comics doesn't mean that the average, normal, everyday person's gonna know that either. And I have to admit, watching it the first time, I wasn't really that into the idea of him being a villain, and I didn't really feel like he had a lot of emotional weight. But watching it a few more times over the years, and paying attention to certain things like facial expressions, and the scene where Robert Redford has his memory wiped inside that chamber, when his memories start to come back after he sees Steve Rogers out in the middle of the street. Like you start to see him being dragged by certain Russian soldiers and being experimented on by Hydra, and Arnim Zola goes, Sergeant Barnes, put him on ice. And then when Alexander Pierce interrogates him, said, mission report now. Why didn't you kill Captain America? But I knew him. Every time he starts to remember who he is, Hydra wipes his memory and puts him in carbon freeze and has him go out on these missions. And every time he says, but I knew him, I actually feel really sorry for this poor guy. I mean, he didn't ask for this, to be made into an assassin. In a way, I think he's like the mirror image of Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers works for S.H.I.E.L.D. and he's serving his country. Bucky Barnes is the Winter Soldier for Hydra. Kind of like Batman and the Joker in some vague ways. They're mirror images of each other in their service to their causes that they're fighting for. And I love the final confrontation with him and Steve Rogers on the helicarrier. And Steve is trying to get Bucky to snap out of his trance. Say, Bucky, I'm not gonna fight you. And then he just jumps on and says, you're my mission. And finish it, because I'm with you to the end of the line. Which Bucky said the exact same thing to him 70 years ago. Right when he says that, you see this look in Bucky's face like he's going, wait a minute. I said that same thing to you 70 years ago. Oh my god, I do know you! And you feel sorry for these two guys because they're friends. You don't want them to be enemies, right? Now, since I mentioned Hydra, the other big humongous spoiler besides the Winter Soldier's identity is that this Hydra thing is growing inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. over the course of 70 years. When Steve and Natasha go to the old base where Steve Rogers trained at, they discover a bunker, which turns out to be the start of the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. And they see these old computer systems. They turn it on, and it turns out it's Arnim Zola. I have never been more alive. I remember when I first saw this and I heard that voice, I just went, who is that? Is that the same? Is that? Just went, whoa. Hold on, what is going on here? And of course they explain they uploaded his consciousness into a computer. I go, oh, okay. And then he reveals he was recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D., which caused him to recruit other people to join his cause and grow inside S.H.I.E.L.D., doing all these certain things over the years, like kill Howard Stark and other people as well with the help of the Winter Soldier. And like I said, I legitimately did not know that reveal because I stayed away from all other possible spoilers. That when that reveal happened, that's where I went, oh my, these guys are in trouble now. Now some people might have problems with that scene with Arnim Zola being inside a computer being so exposition heavy. Personally, I didn't really care. I mean, there's going to be exposition in a movie. It's all a matter of how you choose to use it to your advantage. In this movie, I think it fits fine. Let's talk about the action sequences. The action sequences reminded me of a Jason Bourne movie, particularly Bourne Identity. The camera work, it's very shaky cam-like and quick cuts similar to Bourne Identity. Mostly it looks very good, and you can tell what's going on in the fight scenes, particularly the scene on the ship and where Steve Rogers is fighting Batroc the Leaper, and the elevator fight, which is really intense. And I love when Captain America just kicks up the shield and catches it with his arm, kind of like a Marty McFly kind of thing. And the highway confrontation scene, and the final fight on the helicarrier between him and the Winter Soldier and the other Hydra agents. But there are a few times where it does get a little too on the nose. It's a little too quick cut and shaky that it may be a little distracting here and there, but overall, I never really had a problem with it. To my knowledge, this is the first big budget action flick done by Joe and Anthony Russo, the Russo Brothers, who are primarily known for comedy. Marvel continues to prove that sometimes these small budget filmmakers, they can prove to be the best choice, and this movie proves that wholeheartedly. And the tone feels very grounded and a little bit gray in comparison to the first movie, which was very pro-America and yeah, America, yeah! This one completely turns it on its head, showing the dark side of patriotism, and how a lot of sick stuff goes on behind the scenes in politics and how people can backstab each other as a means to an end. It's been around since the beginning of politics, like way back when in the ancient times, so it's nothing new here, but this movie just continues to show you that no. It's easy to look at America as absolutely perfect or whatever other country you may be a part of, but really in politics, it's always been dirty and it's not going away anytime soon. And as I said with the scene with Nick Fury and Steve Rogers talking about freedom and fear, I like how this movie touches upon certain current modern fears that we've had since the 9/11 attacks. Fear of terrorism striking within our country. Let me ask you a question. Let's say a bunch of people were going to blow up a soccer stadium in Pakistan, and you knew you could stop it with the flick of a switch, would you? Not if it was your switch. Speaking of the board members, I was really surprised to see this guy appear as one of the board members. There was a voice inside my head going, yeah, Mr. Lau! And this guy's got the worst luck, believe it or not. He gets killed by Alexander Pierce, gets killed by Malcolm Merlyn, and he gets killed by the Joker. Can this guy ever catch a break? And another thing that struck me with the political themes, Captain America gets literally dragged through the mud towards the end when he falls off the helicarrier into the river. And then in the background, as Steve Rogers is laying on the ground, you see the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters crumbling to the ground on fire. And it goes to show you that everything that Captain America stood for is gone, which was a very bold move on Marvel's part. I mean, Captain America straight up tells Nick Fury, no, S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, it all goes. We don't care how much is left intact. We gotta burn this whole thing to the ground so there are no traces of it. Speaking of that scene, Joe Russo, one of the directors of this movie, makes an appearance to help Nick Fury and Black Widow with their wounds. I didn't notice this until watching it again recently. I just went, that's Joe Russo. Speaking of cameos, this is one of the best Stan Lee cameos. Oh man, I am so fired. Oh man. I can't even. But back to S.H.I.E.L.D. being destroyed. Again, it's a really bold move, and at the time it made me go, what are they going to do now? Who are the Avengers going to answer to? And what's going to happen to that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show? I know that show's still going on right now. But at the time, I was thinking, I guess maybe they'll be in hiding or something, or there's like a secret underground kind of branch that they got to go to. And I'm very curious to see if S.H.I.E.L.D's going to come back in the future, like with Civil War, or maybe the Infinity Wars movies. Who the hell knows? But amidst all this backstabbing and political treachery, Captain America still maintains a sense of hope and optimism. As I mentioned in my first Avenger review, a lot of people don't really seem to care about Captain America because he's too Boy Scout-like. I get why, but I like that kind of character because it's someone you can look up to. And I really like how he never turns angry and brooding and in the midst of all this treachery, he still maintains his belief in truth, justice, and the American way, which arguably my favorite part is when he gives the speech to all the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. The price of freedom is high, and it's a price I'm willing to pay. And every time I watch him say that, I just go, that's why you're Captain America, man. Marvel Studios has a clear understanding of these characters and what makes them tick, especially Kevin Feige, who's produced every single movie in this franchise. So in conclusion, I really love The Winter Soldier. It's arguably the best comic book movie in the last few years, next to Days of Future Past or Dark Knight Rises or the first Avengers or maybe even Guardians of the Galaxy. Hey, it's my opinion, okay? You don't like it? Tough. I'm just kidding. You guys are awesome. And I cannot wait to see what Civil War has to offer, and hopefully it'll be good. I'm not expecting Winter Soldier all over again, but I am hoping it's a good movie in its own right. So thank you guys for listening to my thoughts on The Winter Soldier. Comment below and tell me what you think of The Winter Soldier. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was alright? Let me know what you think down below. Stay tuned for my Spider-Man video coming up very soon. Can't wait to share that with you guys. And I'll see you guys next time. On your left.